Who are the 10 most important players to the future of the Buffalo Bills? I'm joined by 12 Buffalo Bills podcasters and content creators to answer that question today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All right, folks, welcome in. For the fourth consecutive year on this podcast, we are going to determine who the top 10 most important players to the future of the Buffalo Bills are and rank them in order of importance. But this isn't just my list. I am only 1/13th. I invited 12 other Buffalo Bills content creators to join me in developing a consensus ranking. So who are the other 12? In the past, I had 10 other members. I added 2 new members of the panel this year. But in alphabetical order by first name, we have Anthony Marino, Anthony Prohaska, Bruce Nolan, Greg Tompsett, Jerry Ostroski, he's new this year, former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman, Joe Miller, the other new one, John Fina, another former Buffalo Bills player, of course, the left tackle there for a number of seasons, Nate Geary, Pat Moran, Ryan Talbot, Sterling Furrow, and Z-Bot. And so I asked each member of the panel to provide me with their own individual list of the 10 most important players to the future of the Buffalo Bills. And when they made their list, I asked them to do this by looking at the players through the lens of if this player reaches their ceiling and or maintains their current level of play for a number of continued years, how will that impact the success of the Buffalo Bills? Also, in doing so, I asked them to consider how important the role is that that player fills with the team. And if they can't be the answer, how difficult would it be for the Bills to find that answer? And then when I got all of the sets of rankings, 13 sets of rankings, so 12 members of the group plus my own, I averaged them all together to develop the consensus list of the top 10 most important players to the future of the Buffalo Bills. So today on the podcast, we are going to unveil the top 10 with a different member of the panel providing analysis on why each player is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills. Tomorrow on the podcast, I asked each member of the group a follow-up question, either about the uniqueness of their own rankings or an overall reaction to the results of the project. And I'll also have a tease of what you can expect from that later today on this episode. But here, let's get into this. 20 players, 20 different players were listed among the 13 sets of rankings. So tomorrow's podcast is going to be your chance to hear more about some of those unique rankings that extend beyond the consensus top 10. And I can tell you this, in working with the panel, most of which has participated for all 4 years now, we found this to be by far the most challenging year yet. So today and tomorrow, I am very much embracing the role of host. I will introduce the next player on the ranking, tell you some of the numbers about the player as it relates to the individual sets of rankings, and allow a member of the panel to share their thoughts as to why that player is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills. So before I give you this year's top 10, let me give you last year's top 10, and you're going to notice there is quite a bit of turnover. Last year, this is how we stacked it up. Number 1, Josh Allen. Number 2, Stephon Diggs. Number 3, Matt Milano. Number 4, Dion Dawkins. Number 5, Greg Rousseau. Number 6, Von Miller. Number 7, Tre'Davious White. Number 8, Dalton Kincaid. Number 9, Spencer Brown. And number 10, Kyer Elam. Some of the highlights for this year: 5 players that didn't receive a single vote last year are in the top 10 this year. The other nugget: only 4 players on the list last year returned among the top 10 this year. So as we've all considered this Bills roster to be a roster in transition, the results of this project very much align with that. All right, folks. After a quick break, we are going to start unveiling the top 10 most important players to the future of the Buffalo Bills. So be sure to stick with us. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a huge win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks, let's get into it. The number 10 player is rookie safety Cole Bishop. Bishop landed on 8 of 13 ballots, including landing as the number 6 player on both of our former Bills players, John Fina and Jerry Ostroski. So here's John Fina on why Cole Bishop is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
This is John Fina, former Buffalo Bill and one of your 3 co-hosts for the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. I'm here to tell you why Cole Bishop was number 10 on our consensus top 10 players that will impact the future of our Buffalo Bills. Let's unpack Cole Bishop. All right, here's a guy who played at a super high level at Utah. Great tackler, really good in open space, but more than anything else, the guy has an incredibly aggressive nature. And if you go look at his film, just go to YouTube, go check it out. What I love about this guy is he's instinctual, but he marries that with the ability to be at a full stop and then accelerate into a tackle. He's a sure tackler, and he's great to watch. With a void of Poyer and Hyde gone from Buffalo, we've been spoiled for years with a couple of super legends. Now, Cole Bishop has to step in and take that role of enforcer in our secondary. I can tell you we need him to succeed. He has the skills to do it. My concern is him in the middle of the field picking up receivers and crossing situations. I think that will be his challenge. That's where he will have to grow the most. But over the top, coming downhill, and at the line of scrimmage, you can't ask for a better defender. That's my take on Cole Bishop. Number 10 consensus on our list. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate it. I'm former Buffalo Bill John Fina, one of 3 co-hosts for your Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network.
Coming in at number 9 is cornerback Christian Benford. Despite entering his 3rd season with the Bills, this is the first time that he has ever received a vote in this project, and he gained enough support to slot at number 9 on this year's rankings. Here's Jerry Ostroski, who placed Benford number 7 on his personal ballot, on why Benford is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
This is the Big O Jerry Ostroski with Overreaction Buffalo. I'm going to talk a little bit about Christian Benford, the former 7th-round pick out of Villanova. This is a guy that was he started 14 games, played in 15. He was inactive for 2. Over the 2 years that he's been with the club, 24 games played, and he has 3 interceptions. When you look at last year, he played 91% of the snaps in 2023, played 62% as a rookie. He did have some injury issues, but he still played 62% of the plays for that Bills defense. And when you look at this guy, he's starting to come into his own. he's turning into that premier corner, that corner that can shut off half of the field, that corner that can take away the premier receiver for the other team, or at least slow him down. And a guy that you take away half the field, you ain't got to worry about it. Next thing you know, what happens? You make that quarterback hold the ball a little bit longer. And this is a defense that has question marks in the pass rush. And now all of a sudden that quarterback holds the ball. Those defensive ends, your interior defensive linemen, they start to get home because the quarterback can't get the ball out on time. That is the type of player that Benford is becoming. And you talk about his coverage skills. Let's talk about how physical he is. Again, 6'1", 205. He is a very, very good tackler. 43 solo tackles last year, 11 assists, 3 tackles for loss, 54 total tackles last season. It's a guy that some felt maybe would translate at safety eventually in a pinch, but he's turned into being the best cornerback on the team. And if you look at his play last year, he was 5th on the team in total tackles, 2nd only to when you look at Taron Johnson as far as the DBs go. So a guy that can cover, a guy that can tackle. And again, we talked about he had 2 interceptions in 23, 3 interceptions in his career. He is slowly becoming that dependable physical corner that you need in the NFL in today's game. And this is a guy that if the Bills are going to get to where they ultimately want to be, which is winning that Super Bowl, hoisting that Super Bowl above their head, that trophy, Benford's going to need to be on the field, because when he's out there, it makes it a lot easier for Bobby Babich Jr. and McDermott and the defensive side of the ball to do things, because they know that that side has been taken care of. Again, this is a Big O, Jerry Ostroski. I'm on Overreaction Buffalo. You can catch me on X at Ostroski_Big O, or you can catch me over on the gram on Instagram at Oski Big, OSKI Big. Again, Jerry Ostroski, Overreaction Buffalo, and we'll see you soon.
Our number 8 player is linebacker Matt Milano, and Milano was our number 3 player entering 2023, but he slides to number 8 in this year's project. In fact, 7 of the 13 members of the panel left Milano completely out of their individual top 10 ballot, but he's still ranked in the top 4 for 3 members of the panel. One of those 3 is Ryan Talbot, who is here to tell us why Matt Milano is still so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
What's up, Bills Mafia? I'm Ryan Talbot, co-host of the Shout Buffalo Football podcast, here to tell you why Matt Milano is our number 8 player in our consensus top 10 players to the future of the Buffalo Bills. Matt Milano was sorely missed last season after he suffered a significant knee injury against Jacksonville in London. The team's defense eventually adjusted, thanks in part to the tremendous linebacker play of Terrel Bernard. But you saw the importance of Milano come playoff time when the Bills were facing against the Kansas City Chiefs. Had Milano played in that game, I feel like there could have been a completely different outcome, because Milano is a jack-of-all-trades linebacker. Simply put, he can do everything. Matt Milano can play the traditional linebacker role. He's excellent against the run. He can go sideline to sideline. He is underrated, in my opinion, when it comes to getting after the quarterback and blitzing the quarterback. And he's also one of the few tight ends in this league that is great in terms of coverage against the top-tier tight ends of the league. Matt Milano's ability to play fast and use his instincts is why he is so important to Sean McDermott's defense, and why he is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills. Matt Milano came in at number 8 on our list, but I had him listed as my number 4 most important player for this upcoming season and to the future of the Buffalo Bills. Again, I'm Ryan Talbot. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan Talbot Bills, and you can follow the Shout Buffalo Football podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube.
Coming in at number 7 is defensive end Gregory Rousseau. Greg Rousseau was number 5 last year and takes a slight dip to number 7. With that said, he did find himself on 11 of 13 ballots overall. Nate Geary ranked him 6th on his personal ballot, and he's here to tell us why Greg Rousseau is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
Hey everyone, I'm Nate Geary, host of Buffalo Bills pregame, halftime, and postgame on WGR Sports Radio 550 and the Buffalo Bills Radio Network. I'm here today to tell you why Buffalo Bills defensive end Gregory Rousseau is this year's number 7 player in our consensus top 10 players to the future of the Buffalo Bills. The former 30th overall pick in 2021 enters his 4th and arguably most important season with the Bills following his up and down 2023 campaign that saw the 24-year-old's sack totals go from a career high of 8 in 2022 down to 5 in 2023. Although those sack numbers did in fact take a step back from 8 to 5, it doesn't exactly tell the whole story on the success or failures of Gregory Rousseau's 2022 seasons. In fact, he had career highs in pressures, tackles for loss, and quarterbacks hits in 16 games last year. For me, though, injuries were the top story for the edge rusher, who, when healthy, is one of the best edge-setting run defenders in all of football. The problem is Rousseau has battled foot and ankle injuries the last 2 seasons that have forced him to miss a combined 4 games over those 2 season spans. And in both cases, it took several weeks for Rousseau to get back to the form he was playing at prior to the injury, which, frankly, in both seasons was a very, very high level. Rousseau dropped from 5 in last year's consensus top 10 to 7 this year, but it's hard to dispute just how important the 2024 season will be for both Rousseau and the Bills at large. After losing Leonard Floyd in free agency, of course, he led the Bills last year in sacks, and not knowing what kind of version you're going to get of Von Miller in 2024, a lot is going to be riding on Rousseau to take a big step as a pass rusher, but an every down pass rusher and a more consistent player overall in 2024. Rousseau certainly has the size and athleticism necessary to dominate at the NFL level. And with the Bills recently picking up his 5th-year option, the team will have Rousseau comfortably under contract through the next 2 seasons through 2025. But make no mistake, this 2024 season is a contract year for Rousseau, who will likely see an uptick in snaps this year with limited depth behind him. And frankly, the need for him to take a step up this year. Will Rousseau take that Danielle Hunter 4th-year jump into elite level pass rusher status, or will he struggle to stay healthy again and piece together another up and down season? I believe a lot will be riding on that big jump in 2024. I'm Nate Geary with WGR Sports Radio 550 and the Buffalo Bills Radio Network.
Coming in at number 6 is our second player to be entering his 3rd season on the team, but never once received a vote prior to this year, and that is linebacker Terrel Bernard. While Bernard was ranked well on just about every ballot, nobody slotted him higher than Joe Miller, who had him number 3 on his personal ballot. Here's Joe Miller on why Terrel Bernard is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
What is going on, everybody? Joe Miller here from the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Miller Wired, and I'm here to talk to you about why Terrel Bernard is the number 6 most important from a consensus standpoint player for the Buffalo Bills going into 2024. I personally had him at number 3. And there's a lot of reasons for that. My number 1 player was Josh Allen, which pretty much everybody had Josh Allen. My number 2 player was Connor McGovern. I was the only person that had Connor McGovern that high, and I was only one of 3 people that actually had him on the list because of how important I feel that position is going to be to the offense. And then number 3, it actually goes right along with number 2. I had Terrel Bernard at number 3. The consensus pick was number 6. He made the list, which clearly speaks to how important he's going to be in 2024. But when you look at Terrel Bernard, there is no question, there is no conversation about whether or not he can play that position. He proved last year, despite some takes, including mine. I said at the beginning of the 2023 season that there is not a proven starting caliber middle linebacker to replace Tremaine Edmunds on this roster. And boy, did Terrel Bernard prove me wrong. However, I feel like that slope, that uptick of not necessarily performance, but in difficulty this season. So first of all, it has gone through the roof. First of all, he's going to have to remain healthy. That is going to be the most important piece to what he does. We know that he was hurt. He's a little bit undersized. When is Matt Milano going to be ready? If he's not ready, Dorian Williams is going to be taking snaps next to Terrel Bernard, which is going to put a little more pressure on him. And oh, by the way, Terrel Bernard also has 2 brand new safeties behind him. One potentially is going to be a rookie. Now, a smart rookie in Cole Bishop. However, that doesn't necessarily make the difficulty and challenge of losing Hyde and Poyer, who, let's be honest, two of the greatest safety tandems in Bills history, possibly in the NFL while they were here together. When those guys leave, when that presence leaves, and a Tre'Davious White on the outside, there's a measure of the quarterback of the defense being Terrel Bernard, and not overly having to worry about what's going on behind you when Hyde and Poyer are back there. And the reality is, with those two gone, the amount of pressure to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing, everybody's communicating properly, and that the plays are executed properly, and the checks are happening, and the switches are happening, the audibles are happening, and his level of importance and responsibility on the field is going to go through the roof this year. So I had him at 3. The overall consensus was 6, and I believe 6 is probably a good spot, maybe a little higher. Thank you, Joe Marino, for having me. Again, my name is Joe Miller, one of the hosts of the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. You can find me on Twitter again at Joe Miller Wired. And if you're looking for our content for mine, John Fina, or Jerry Ostrowski's content, just search any platform, type in Overreaction Buffalo, and you are sure to get it. Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you soon. Go Bills.
Well, folks, it finally happened. The NFL schedule was released, and there are so many high-profile games on the schedule that I'd love to attend this season. I'm sure you as well. Well, you got to check out Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have an awesome app, and it is easy to navigate. They give you flash deals. They give you zone deals, last-minute ticket specials. They also give you a seat view, so you know exactly what to expect, and an all-in price. I love that. You don't have to worry about what the fees are going to be at the end of the ticket purchasing process. They give you the all-in price right from the jump. So check it out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome to the top 5. And at number 5, we have offensive tackle Dion Dawkins, who ranked number 4 in 2023. Dawkins ranked among the top 5 in 7 of 13 individual ballots, including from Z-Bot, who had him at number 4. Here's Z-Bot on why Dawkins is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
What's up, Bills Mafia? Z-Bot here from the Buffalo Fanatics to tell you why Dion Dawkins is the number 5 player in our consensus top 10 players to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
You go back to year 1, you're going into year 7. What's different about Dion in year 7 compared to Dion in year 1?
I got more haters than I ever had.
The Snowman did his best to silence those haters this past year, putting together one of his best seasons as a Buffalo Bill. The 7-year vet was called upon to do more than ever in 2023, playing every single offensive snap of the Bills' 19 games, which led to a career high in snap count. His stellar season not only earned him his 3rd Pro Bowl nod, but it also helped spearhead the Bills' offensive line to perhaps their best season ever with Josh Allen at the helm. PFF ranked the Bills' O-line as the 6th best in the NFL in 2023, which is no small feat when you think about the state of the Bills' offensive line coming into this past season. In comparison, the Bills ranked as PFF's 23rd offensive line in both 2021 and 2022, and questions were mounting as to whether or not this unit would ever flip from a hindrance to an advantage for Josh Allen. In 2023, they answered those questions with flying colors. The Bills' offensive line only allowed 12 sacks the entire season, the fewest in the entire league. No one contributed to this accolade more than Dion Dawkins, who, despite being tasked with the highest usage rate of his career, only allowed a single sack the entire season, the fewest of his entire career. This helped make him the highest graded pass blocker and overall offensive lineman on the Bills roster. And Josh Allen wasn't the only one to benefit from the stellar offensive line play that was led by Dion Dawkins. The Bills finished the year as the 5th best rushing offense in the NFL, featuring an 1,100-yard season from James Cook, the most by a Bills running back since Shady all the way back in 2017. A strong 2023 from Dion Dawkins is a great sign for Bills fans heading into next season. It goes without saying that this organization is moving into a whole new chapter under Sean McDermott and Josh Allen in 2024 and beyond. And Dion will be relied upon more than ever, not only on the field, but in the locker room as well. I know this is hard to believe, but heading into year 8, Dion Dawkins is now the most tenured Buffalo Bill on the offensive side of the ball and the second most tenured Bill overall, only behind long snapper Reed Ferguson. Combining his tenure with the departure of the likes of Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, Mitch Moore, Stephon Diggs, you name it, Dion's leadership will be pivotal towards sustaining the foundation of the Bills culture over the upcoming years. Luckily for us, Dawkins is a man who perfectly fits this role. Dion provides consistent high-level play on the field and consistent high character off of it, coming off back-to-back Walter Payton Man of the Year nominations. He's also going to be around for the long haul, having just signed a 3-year extension with the Bills that will keep him with the team through the 2027 season. The Bills' offense finds itself filled with youth and new faces, which naturally brings a lot of change. This change is a lot easier to navigate, however, with a guy like number 73 helping lead the way. And that's why Dion Dawkins is unquestionably one of the top 10 most important players to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
A rookie cracks the top 5. At number 4 is wide receiver Keon Coleman. Despite being a rookie, Coleman was ranked on 11 of 13 individual ballots, including 5 members of the panel, putting him in their top 5. Nobody had Coleman higher than Patrick Moran, who ranked him at number 2. Here's Pat on why Keon Coleman is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
Hey, Patrick Moran here, host of Talking Buffalo, Buffalo Sports Talking More every weekday. Here today to tell you why Keon Coleman is the number 4 player on our consensus top 10 players to the future of the Buffalo Bills. Where do I even begin? The wide receiver position for the Bills has played out like a soap opera this past offseason. Gabe Davis signed as a free agent with Jacksonville. The team didn't have any interest in bringing back Trent Sherfield. They cut Deontay Hardy. And, of course, the big move came in early April when the Bills traded number 1 receiver Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans for a premium draft asset next year. Add it all up, that's 4 of the 5 wide receivers from last year gone. Now, the Bills still have an emerging Khalil Shakir. They added Curtis Samuel in free agency, a player many are excited about. But without question, the big move came in the draft when Buffalo used their first pick on Keon Coleman out of Florida State. Forget words. Coleman's relevance to the Bills was shown with their actions. They didn't trade up to 6 for Malik Neighbors. They didn't trade up to 9 for Rome Odunze. They didn't trade up and go get Brian Thomas Jr. They didn't take another receiver for the duration of the draft after taking Coleman with the 33rd overall pick, despite many, including myself, thinking that a double dip was coming. Brandon Beane didn't feel the need to move heaven on earth to financially accommodate a big trade, whether it was for a T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk. And they didn't try to make Odell Beckham Jr. a free agent offer he couldn't refuse. Nope. Instead, they only signed the guy who was suspended a year for gambling, and then they added Chase Claypool. It's clear as day the Bills organization is not only confident in Coleman, but are counting on him to come in and to matter right away. His development, his trajectory is going to be critical to Josh Allen and his offense. I think realistically, the needle for Keon Coleman over these next few years isn't to replicate what Stephon Diggs did for 3.5 of his 4 years, but to improve on and be more consistent than what Gabe Davis gave them. Shakir, Samuel, especially Dalton Kincaid, they're going to be important elements of this Bills offense for sure. But Coleman's development on the field and maybe his chemistry with Josh Allen off it could be as important as anything else on Joe Brady's side of the ball. If Keon Coleman pans out, the fans, the team, they hope he does, of course. They're going to have a star on their hands. Maybe another Ocho Cinco. That's a guy I kind of like to compare him to right now. But if he fizzles out, Brandon Beane's going to be right back to the drawing board, and he'll be using premium assets at a spot he'd rather be allocating elsewhere over the next few years. You can follow me on Twitter at Patrick Moran TV and check out Talking Buffalo every weekday on all major podcasting platforms or YouTube.
Number 3 is Ed Oliver, and this is an interesting one. The first year that we did this project was in 2021, and Oliver ranked 5th. In 2022, he ranked 6th. In 2023, which proved to be the breakout season we've been waiting for, Oliver fell all the way to number 16, and he was only ranked in the top 10 for one member of the panel. This year, he's number 3. Here's Sterling Furrow on why Ed Oliver is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
Hey, my name is Sterling Furrow, and I'm the host of the Intentional Grounding podcast on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network. And the number 3 player on our consensus top 10 this year is Ed Oliver. Now, before we get into Ed Oliver, I think it's really, really, really important that we take a moment and look what Brandon Beane did in the 2023 offseason. Ed Oliver is a guy who he really hadn't lived up to the expectation of being a first-round, 9th overall pick. We saw flashes, but we never saw the consistency. And what Brandon Beane did was extend him to a 4-year, $68 million, $45 million guaranteed. I think that puts him at $17 million a season. And I got to be honest, I didn't know. I was a little worried. I'm like, okay, we're going to pay a guy who hasn't necessarily lived up to the promise that he once had when he was selected 5 years ago. We're going to give him that much money. And it wasn't a contract that blew the market out of the water. It wasn't a record-setting deal by any means. But you would want, if you're going to pay a guy $45 million guaranteed, you're going to want to see more production from the position. Well, in 2023 is exactly what we got. Okay, let's go over some of the 2023 stats. Ed Oliver had 51 tackles, 32 stops, 48 hurries. Okay, he had 9.5 sacks. That is tremendous for interior defensive lineman. That placed him 3rd amongst defensive tackles. He also had an interception with 65 pressures. I mean, that's phenomenal output when you look at an interior defensive lineman. Also, let's look at a couple of dominant games. I thought the New England game, the second time the Bills played New England Patriots, he was incredible. But the Chargers game is where you really saw him pop out on tape. I mean, he even had the sack to close out the game. So that gives you a little snapshot of what Ed Oliver is capable of. And look at the contract, and it's like, okay, the Buffalo Bills got a home run deal. So Brandon Beane, tip of the cap to you, but Ed Oliver is the number 3 overall player on our list this year. And I think he has even more room to get better now that the Buffalo Bills re-signed Daquan Jones. You add Dwayne Carter, and now Ed Oliver can just be a dominant force on 3rd down, right? And he could take that next step. So in my opinion right now, I mean, it's not crazy to say that Ed Oliver is a top 5, top 10 defensive tackle and with room to grow. So Ed Oliver, number 3 on our list. I'm Sterling Furrow, host of the Intentional Grounding podcast on the Buffalo Fanbase Network, and thank you very much.
Surprisingly enough, only 2 players appeared on every single individual ballot, and those are the next 2 on the list. But coming in at number 2 and up from number 8 last year is tight end Dalton Kincaid. There's a lot of things we don't know about Bruce Nolan, but if there is something that we do know, it's that he's a massive fan of Dalton Kincaid. Here's Bruce Nolan on why Dalton Kincaid is so important to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
I'm Bruce Nolan, and this is why Dalton Kincaid is the 2nd most important player for the Buffalo Bills moving forward. The truth of the matter is that if Stefon Diggs wasn't traded away from the Buffalo Bills to the Houston Texans, Dalton Kincaid probably wouldn't be 2nd on this list. He'd still be high, but he wouldn't be there. In addition, the Buffalo Bills didn't replace Stefon Diggs with some high-profile, big-name free agent acquisition or someone they got in trade. Instead, it's Dalton Kincaid that's looked to as being the player that the Buffalo Bills may need to run the passing offense through in a high target share in 2024. If the Buffalo Bills passing attack in 2024 is high volume, maximum efficiency, ball over the middle of the field, try to generate yards after catch, then Dalton Kincaid is going to be a big piece of that. In 2023, he caught 73 passes for 673 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that was with him not really earning the starting role until part of the way into the season. Of all the current pass catchers on the Buffalo Bills roster, the most significant investment was made in Dalton Kincaid. They didn't just expend a 1 to get him, they expended a 1 and they used a 4 to trade up to get him in the first round. Brent Sobleski from Bleacher Report did a list recently of 8 NFL second-year players who were, quote, primed to explode in 2024. Kincaid was one of them. When you let your top 2 pass catchers, as far as targets go, and you don't replace them with first-round picks or big free agent expenditures, you're probably looking at someone in-house to make that step. Khalil Shakir is one of those players. Dalton Kincaid is probably the biggest one. Again, this has been Bruce Nolan. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Bruce Exclusive.
I know the suspense has been killing you, but your wait has come to an end. The number 1 most important player to the future of the Buffalo Bills is quarterback Josh Allen. He was the number 1 player on every single ballot. And while it's obvious as to why Josh is number 1, Greg Tompsett has a unique angle to consider when discussing Josh Allen's importance to the future of the Buffalo Bills.
Good evening, and wait, this isn't my show. Sorry. Welcome to the Locked On Bills top 10 most important players to the Buffalo Bills special. Thank you to Joe Marino for welcoming me. I'm Greg Tompsett, the host of the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and Joe gave me the unenviable position of explaining why Joshua Patrick Allen is the most important player to the Buffalo Bills. How could anyone possibly explain that in any simple terms? It's such a complex topic. Honestly, everyone listening to the show knows why Josh Allen is the most important player to the Bills. I think you can make a good argument. He's the greatest thing that's ever happened to this franchise and the potential of what he can bring. So I'm going to focus more on a topic that I think is interesting to look at, and that's that I think this might be the biggest gap in our overall exercise. I think Josh has been the number 1 guy every year that Joe has done this exercise, and with good reason. But there's been a lot more debate in who number 2 is and where everyone else comes in. And I think this is by far the biggest gap that there's been between Josh and anyone else on this team. Obviously, we saw Black Wednesday and the reset that this franchise went through, and a lot of leaders within the organization leaving. Obviously, the enormous Stephon Diggs trade, some turnover on the defensive side of the ball, and there are some very exciting up-and-coming talent. You're going to hear a lot more about those guys from many of the other talented hosts that are joining Joe on this journey here. But I think that not only is Josh the biggest gap in our recent history with the Bills, I think it's the biggest gap in the league. I think that there is a bigger gap between Josh Allen and the second best player on the Bills than there is between any other player and the second best player on their team in the entire league. Now, one, that's a kudos to Josh Allen and how talented he is and the potential of what he brings and the importance of a franchise quarterback position. But it also speaks to the opportunity that some of these guys have to step up. Is that going to become a Terrel Bernard, an Ed Oliver, a Gregory Rousseau, a Dalton Kincaid? Who's going to step up and claim that role as the definitive, next cornerstone on this team? So, again, I think it's a pretty easy topic, but I appreciate Joe giving me the chance to talk through some of the other nuances around Josh Allen as the most important player on this team. Again, you can find more of our work at Cover One anywhere that you're listening to this fantastic show, Locked On Bills, and find me on Twitter at Greg Tompsett. Looking forward to being able to talk with you guys more. But with that, we are out.
So, folks, here's an idea of what you can expect tomorrow on the podcast, where I have a follow-up question for each member of the panel. And my first question is for Anthony Prohaska. Anthony, Keon Coleman, and Cole Bishop both landed among the consensus top 10, but you were the only member of the panel to include neither on your personal ballot. What was your reason for that?
What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle-earth. I'm Anthony Prohaska, host of Disguised Coverage and co-host of the Cover One Film Room, here to tell you why I was the only member of the panel to include neither Keon Coleman or Cole Bishop on my top 10 ballot. For me, there's so much variance with rookies and what they can become that I tend to be cautious with putting them on lists like this. So roster makeup is a large determining factor for me with rookies and trajectories. That being said, Keon Coleman and Cole Bishop were each in consideration for coming in at either 9 or 10 on my list. But given the makeup of the Bills roster and individual player trajectories and positional premiums, I ended up leaving them out, even though they were both close to making it. Christian Benford came in at 10 for me, and with him being the current CB2 and trending upwards with 2 years left of cost control and cornerback being a premium position more so than safety, that bumped him over Cole Bishop. And depending on what happens with Rasul Douglas and his own individual trajectory, Christian Benford could be looking at being CB1 next year, which from a premium position standpoint outranks being pass catcher number 2 for me, which is what I believe Keon Coleman would be at best behind Dalton Kincaid. Then Terrel Bernard came in at 9 for me, and even though linebacker isn't the premium position it necessarily once was, it's still an important position for this defense in general, and even more so now given the current state of flux that the defense is in. And given his communication, football IQ, and play style, Bernard could very well be the glue and or leader of the defense for the next couple of years, which means his play can have a larger scale impact. And if he sees a second contract, could happen even further. Also, despite it being less than ideal, Keon Coleman and Cole Bishop not hitting are things that this team can overcome. I view Coleman more as an auxiliary piece to Kincaid and to the offense as a whole. So given that, plus quality wide receivers seemingly becoming more prevalent with each passing year via the draft, and the presence of a good Bills run game, it makes the notion of Coleman being a miss a bit more palatable. And if Cole Bishop is a miss, Sean McDermott has consistently shown from his time in Philly to Carolina to Buffalo that he can squeeze the most blood out of that positional stone in terms of player trajectories and on-field execution. He raises floors and he raises ceilings for his safeties. So in essence, Coleman and Bishop not making my list was a combination of my individual evaluations of them, the current state of the team, and what I believe will shake out in the coming seasons. Again, I'm Anthony Prohaska. You can follow me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores, ANT. You can find me hosting Disguised Coverage live every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and on podcasting apps immediately after. And also find me on the Cover One Film Room live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and on podcasting apps immediately after.
Next up is Anthony Marino. And look, this list looks a lot different than last year. 4 players are now included that didn't receive a single vote last year, while 2 and 7 from last year aren't even on the team, while 6, 9, and 10 from 2023 fell out of the top 10 despite remaining on the team. What stands out most to you about the turnover from 2023 to 2024?
All right, Joe, thanks so much for including me again this year. It's happy to be with everyone. This is Anthony Marino. You can catch me each week on Talking Buffalo with Pat Moran, and you can follow me on Twitter at AnthMarino. But Joe, as I take a look at this list and you see the changes, it really does confirm that there's a bit of a change of the guard for the Buffalo Bills, right? With Stefon Diggs, Von Miller, Trey White, Kaiir Elam, Spencer Brown not being on the list. Spencer Brown, I'll talk to you about in another segment, but I think when you talk about Steph Diggs and Trey and Von Miller, listen, 2 of these guys no longer with the franchise. Von Miller obviously underperforming last year. It does show that there is a bit of a youth movement taking place with the Buffalo Bills. And honestly, it's no surprise when you look at some of these names and these new additions to the top 10 this year. Keon Coleman, of course, at least taking Western New York by storm. I think many other parts of the country too, has quickly become a bit of a media darling. But aside from that, just the opportunity to step in and what we hope will be a guy that can deliver in year 1, play the majority of the snaps, and hopefully be, someone that can be a weapon with the ball in his hands. There's an expectation that this guy will be able to make plays over, these next 4 years, but hopefully during the 2024 season as well. Of course, Terrel Bernard, none of us thought he was going to be a great player last year. Comes in, gets the green dot, delivers arguably one of the most important players on the Buffalo Bills. To see him and Matt Milano back together again, I personally can't wait for it. And this guy coming into his third season, I look forward to him making that jump. Speaking of being in their third season, Christian Benford. Again, we can talk about Kaiir Elam not being on this list anymore. I don't know. I'll just pretend that the Bills took Christian Benford in the first round and Kaiir Elam in the sixth. Here's a guy that really has been the starter since he came in as a rookie. Now going into that third season for him as well. As I said before, you get to make that jump. And now you're in a position, him and Rousseau Douglas, I don't even want to say penciled in as the starters. These guys, that should be written in pen. They delivered together last season. And now, Douglas coming in after the trade or at the trade deadline. Now you've got him with Benford, understanding how they can work together. Absolutely love it. And another guy you love, Cole Bishop. We knew the Bills needed to do something at safety during the draft. Maybe it wasn't as exciting as the wide receiver train and some other positions that we had talked about. Cole Bishop comes in with that vote of confidence from Dalton Kincaid. Now you've got someone that might not start from day one. I kind of expect that he may, but you've got him and Mike Edwards and Taylor Rapp, three viable options to start at safety for you. The arrow is looking up with this youth movement for the Buffalo Bills. And yes, a little bit different for this year when it comes to the list, but I'm excited with what we've got. Thanks again for including me, Joe. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Anthony Marino, and take care.
All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. On tomorrow's podcast, I'm going to reveal the entire set of rankings, all 20 players that received votes and how that all averaged together. And of course, the follow-up questions for the panel regarding something unique to their own individual ballots. So make sure that you're subscribed. I'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.